Hello and welcome into Loftside Bantr and the final part of our NFL team preview series. It's been a long time coming that we get to the end of this just before the start of the NFL season. We're ending on the NFC West. The NFC West, obviously, with the Arizona Cardinals, the Seattle Seahawks, the San Francisco 49ers, and the Los Angeles Rams. So a division that has seen some changes over the last few years as far as who's the winner of it, who really kind of dominates it, and everything else like that. Obviously, the Seahawks at one point were in a couple of Super Bowls, won one. The Cardinals had won a few of them. The Rams obviously had been to a few Super Bowls and won one as well. So we start with the Arizona Cardinals. And the Arizona Cardinals at one point were at the top of the NFC West last year and just kind of fell off a cliff. Kyler Murray has shown great flashes of things. He's also made a ton of mistakes. And it's interesting because they thought this was the guy. They were going to go forward with him, and he seems to be just a 500 quarterback at this point in time in his career. He obviously runs around a lot. He obviously puts a lot of effort of getting out of trouble and extending plays. But if you're going to extend the plays, you got to make the throws. And he hasn't done that throughout his career. He's exciting to watch, don't get me wrong. But the Cardinals they don't seem to be able to get out of their own way most of the time. The one real big thing, and this was before even Kyler Murray, this was a long time before the current roster that they have, the All or Nothing on Amazon, which was a great show. That was when they still had Carson Palmer. They still had players like that. They look like they were in a good spot to keep, up and up, and were a real contender for a long time. But it just died out real quickly. Even with new stadium and everything else like that, it died out real quickly for that franchise. They brought in some names that you might recognize. Jacoby Brissett is now the backup quarterback. Calais Campbell, who doesn't ever seem like he's going to retire, defensive end, comes over from the Dolphins. Josh Sweat, the big defensive end signing from the Eagles. Akeem Davis gathered the linebacker from the Bengals. Again, if you're bringing in Bengals defenders from last year, not speaking huge amount of confidence because that defense was so bad. Walter Nolan was their first-round pick, defensive tackle, 16th overall out of Mississippi. So again, real focus on that offensive line. And they also picked up Will Johnson, who was a steal in the second round. Now, injuries were the reason why he dropped to the second round, but he could very well be the best corner that comes out of this draft. Kairos Tonga goes over to the Patriots defensive tackle. So again, they lose their defensive tackle. They draft a new one. And Zach Pascal, the wide receiver, goes over to the Giants. I think Jonathan Gannon's probably going to be on the hot seat. I mean, they're just not developing, or they're not making the steps from where they are. They're a 500 team, and that's where they've been for a while. Excuse me. I don't know if Kyler Murray can play all 17 games. He seems to get hurt a lot. Now, again, that's what happens with a running quarterback. They tend to get hurt. They get themselves out in the open. Defenders lick their chops, and they absolutely destroy them. They didn't make a ton of additions, at least not a ton that really make the needle move for the Arizona Cardinals. So can they make any progress with that kind of lack of additions? Walter Nolan was a good defensive tackle in college. I have no reason to believe that he wouldn't be a good defensive tackle in the NFL, but he doesn't move the needle. Defensive tackles means an unsexy pick, if you will. Now, were they going to go out and draft a wide receiver? No, I don't think they need to. They have Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think they needed to do stuff like that. They bring in veterans. Calais Campbell is going to be a great voice in the locker room. He's been around for a long time. And then if Will Johnson can be healthy this year, I mean, I think they got to steal at corner. But where do they end up at the end of the season? It's probably not winning this division. It's probably not really focusing all that much on winning it. It's probably going to be development. you're probably a year or two away still for the Arizona Cardinals, which brings us to the Los Angeles Rams, who went 10-7 last year, made the playoffs. They were 1-4 to start the year last year, and they ended up 10-7. So they go 9-3 the rest of the way. The big question has been Stafford's health in training camp. He's almost never played. There have been people like, hey, we think that Stafford may be in trouble. He's not showing up to any of these. It looks like he's going to start week 1, but how healthy is he going to be? He's had back issues for a long time, but they did go out and they did pick up some names that will resonate with their fans. Devontae Adams comes over from the Jets. That's a wide receiver you're going to want to be able to have on your team. Stafford's going to love to be able to throw to him. DJ Humphries, offensive lineman from the Chiefs, played pretty well with the Chiefs. David Quisenberry, the tackle from the Vikings. Again, the Vikings didn't have the greatest offensive line last year, but again, put him next to some good guards. I think he'll perform pretty well. Terrence Ferguson was their first draft pick, second round, 46th overall out of Oregon. A weapon, again, for Matthew Stafford. Josiah Stewart, the defensive end, was their third round pick, 90th overall out of Michigan. Guy that can break up a lot of things in the backfield. And, this is a team that is probably still going to compete for the top of the division. Cooper Kupp's gone. He's in Seattle. Tyler Johnson went over to the Jets. So 2 wide receivers gone right there. Hunter Long goes over to the Jaguars. So you can see where they kind of picked up these players to kind of fill in the gaps that they were missing. Now, I think you're upgrading. Devontae Adams is an upgrade over Cooper Kupp right now at this point in their careers. It's an upgrade. Terrence Ferguson, we're going to have to see. Hunter Long wasn't the guy that was always there as the tight end making, 50 catches a year. He just wasn't that guy, but he was a good blocker. So Jonah Jackson got traded over to the Bears. So offensive line questions here or there. But, where is Matthew Stafford going to be at the end of the year? Is he going to be on the bench because he's hurt? Is he going to be playing but not effective? Or is he going to be the leader that they brought him in to win that Super Bowl from Detroit? I mean, we all knew that was kind of the right move for the Rams to make back then, to get over the hump and win the Super Bowl. Now, Jared Goff's obviously in Detroit, and they're asking the same questions as the Rams were. Is he good enough to win a Super Bowl for this franchise? But again, that's the Detroit Lions. Matthew Stafford has had a hell of a career. And even if he doesn't play all that much, it's not going to tarnish his legacy. I mean, he's a Super Bowl champion. He has been an upper echelon quarterback for a long time. He's on the cusp of that when he's at full strength. So from here, it's really going to depend on Matthew Stafford. That's the thing that's going to make the Rams go. San Francisco 49ers. This was the interesting team from last year because they had been to back-to-back Super Bowls, obviously lost to the Chiefs both times. Sorry, 49er fans, but that's just the truth. They went 6-11 last year. They were last in the West. I always say, and I've said in this show many times, you can't use injuries as an excuse. There's just no excuse for any sports team to say, well, we had a lot of injuries. There's a fine line to that, in my opinion. A lot of people were out for the San Francisco 49ers last year. McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, they combined for 40 touchdowns in 2023. 40 touchdowns. Quite a bit of point scoring right there between those three guys. They had 4 touchdowns in 2024. And that's because of not being on the field. I mean, that's what it is. Brock Purdy's gotten his deal. Brock Purdy is the guy. And when you take away all those things, and here's the other argument about Brock Purdy, and I don't think he's proved it yet. I don't think he's proven the fact that he is a true top echelon NFL quarterback, because in 2023 or 2023, however you want to say it, the argument was that you could stick anybody behind the San Francisco offensive line with those weapons and win football games. take those weapons away from him, what did Brock Purdy give you? A whole lot of nothing. And again, it's not for the lack of trying or the lack of talent. It's just when you take those massive weapons away from a team, you're not going to be as effective. You're just not. Now, he made other people. Jennings was a great wide receiver last year for a couple of games before he got hurt. So Brock Purdy has the ability to raise the bar for a lot of his offensive wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, whatever you want to say. George Kittle's the only one that really finished off the year, and I'm pretty sure he was out for some time as well. So it is what it is. But some of the ins for them, Mac Jones, not a great addition, but he is the backup now in San Francisco. Demarcus Robinson comes over from the Rams, so trying to put some depth in that wide receiver room. They've obviously lost some people. We'll go over that in a second. Andre Dillard, the tackle from the Eagles, is probably going to get some time starting with the 49ers. Siren Neal comes over from the Bills, cornerback. Bryce Huff, trade with the Eagles. They brought in Brian Robinson Jr. recently from the Commanders to give running back depth. He wasn't going to get time with the Commanders. Now he's going to back up Christian McCaffrey. And again, maybe he's going to get better success. And Christian McCaffrey has injury issues. He has at least the last few years. Mikael Williams, the defensive end from Georgia, was picked 11th overall by the 49ers. So getting on that pass rush. Solidifying that defensive line. Again, these are not moves that people look at and go, oh, well, this is going to change a lot of things. There's a few names that would have changed a lot of things on that defensive line. Abdul Carter is the one that comes to mind right now. Mikael Williams played really well for Georgia. Georgia has had a hell of a team for the last few years. So picking up prospects from them, you know that they're getting NFL coaching from Kirby Smart. And then Alfred Collins out of Texas, defensive tackle. Again, not a needle mover as far as excitement, but the NFL, a lot of people seem to get away from the fact that if you can win in the trenches, you can win football games. It doesn't matter that Brock Purdy is your quarterback comparative to Lamar Jackson or anything like that. I'm not saying Brock Purdy is Lamar Jackson. Let's not make that connection here before we get into the NFL season and say, oh, the guy from Loftside Bantr said that Brock Purdy is just like Lamar Jackson. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is he's a guy that won't make mistakes. He will make sure that your team has the best opportunity to win without him causing those losses. And he'll make a few here or there. But Brock Purdy is not a guy that is going to get you 400 plus yards in a football game. But he isn't going to throw the ball to the team wearing the opposite jersey, if you know what I'm saying. Deebo Samuel, now with the Commanders. So here's where they bring in kind of Demarcus Robinson and everything else like that. Jalen Moore goes over to the Chiefs. That's where Andre Dillard comes in. I'll get the name right eventually. Dre Greenlaw goes over to the Broncos. That was a big pickup. And again, injuries there as well. Javon Hargrave, injury, left that defense. Alfred Collins comes in. Javarius Ward goes over to the Colts. Siren Neal. Look at that. See where they're kind of placing everything in place where they've lost something. Whether that's because they needed to get salaries off the books or a player just took more money somewhere else or whatever the case may be. They wanted to go win somewhere else. Whatever it is. With good health, will good results come back this season? I think they will. They're too strong of a team to think that if they're healthy, they're not going to compete. Not a ton of roster turnover, but some. What happens with that roster turnover? Are the guys they brought in just as good as the guys that left? I don't think Demarcus Robinson's as good as Deebo Samuel, but there's that. Brandon Ayuk is still on this team. He's going to be out for the first few weeks. So again, we're already talking about injuries. But this team, with the way it's built right now, still has a chance to win the West. Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks, the final team. 10-7 last year. Did not make the playoffs last year. Roster turnover again. Mike McDonald did a great job with this team in his first season. I believe it was the most wins by a first-year coach in team history. What will year 2 bring? Now, he was a defensive guy, and we saw a pretty strong Seahawks defense last year. They got out of Geno Smith. They got younger at the quarterback position. Sam Darnold is now your quarterback. Now, for those Seattle Seahawks fans, yes, having a younger quarterback is great. Geno Smith, I don't think, was ever going to be the guy that's going to bring this team to a Super Bowl. He just wasn't. He's now in Oakland, followed Pete Carroll, right? Or he's traded there, I should say. Cooper Kupp is here. Veteran leadership. A guy, when he's healthy, is one of the best wide receivers in the league. Now, he's been on a decline the last few years. What can he still bring to Seattle? Josh Jones comes over from the Ravens. DeMarcus Lawrence comes over from the Cowboys. That was a big name 3-4 years ago. Veteran leadership. On a decline, maybe. Have they paid too many guys on a decline in their career? Quite possibly. But Gray Zabel. Gray, yeah. First name Gray. Love it. Gray Zabel. Sounds like a football player, doesn't he? Offensive guard from North Dakota State, 18th. Solidify that. Keep Sam Darnold upright. Good pick. Jalen Milroe came in the 3rd round. Here's a guy that could develop behind Sam Darnold. Jalen Milroe at Alabama had such a weird trajectory. People loved him. There were either people that loved him or hated him as the quarterback of Alabama. He was either the best quarterback in the nation or he was one of the worst. That's how it broke down. So now he's here as a 3rd-round pick. Can he develop? Will he be the starter? If they can develop him and he becomes a starter and Sam Darnold goes after a few years, that's a huge success for the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith, as we mentioned, now with the Raiders. Tyler Lockett is now with the Titans. So a good veteran leader for Cam Ward to have out there in Tennessee. Laken Tomlinson goes over to the Texans. I like Laken Tomlinson. I think he was quietly a really, really good guard. I think he probably made a few too many mistakes early on in his career, and he wasn't really regarded as such. And then Artie Burns goes over, the cornerback goes over to the Dolphins, which I'm pretty sure he's injured and done for the year already. They've had so many people in that Miami locker room for cornerbacks. It was ridiculous. Is Sam Darnold the guy for Seattle? I've never been a big Sam Darnold fan. And it starts off when he comes in for the New York Jets, and he had such hype around him and everything else like that coming out of USC. And when I saw him fail time and time again against the New England Patriots, I just thought, well, this is what it is. Sam Darnold is going to be this type of player. I believe he also was the one that said he was seeing ghosts against the Patriots. I might have him mixed up with somebody else. I mean, the Jets have gone through quarterbacks too, like it's nothing. But since leaving New York, he's had some relative success. Played some time with the Panthers. Again, not overly great. But the last few years, or especially last year with the Vikings, for the first half of the year, he looked excellent. Really good. It was the end of the season where, again, maybe there's some injury there. Maybe there's whatever. Maybe there was whatever. But he dropped off pretty heavily in the last 3 games. 2 in the regular season, and then the playoff game for the Vikings. Which Sam Darnold are you going to get? Are you going to get the one from the Jets? Are you going to get the one for the early season of the Vikings? Because my money is that you're going to get a guy that's probably not what you hope for, especially for the money they're paying him. Why is that? Because I've seen it more often than not. There is less success within his story than failures. And again, I'm just a guy that sits here in a loft, and I'm just a guy that's ranting and raving about the Seattle Seahawks at 3:30 on a Thursday. But again, that's what I've seen. Watching him, he's just not been what he was drafted to do. And some of it's growing pains, and yes, some people take longer than others. But Sam Darnold was a top 5 pick in the NFL. Completely missed out with the Jets. Played with the Panthers for a while. Didn't look great there. came to the Vikings to back up J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy got hurt, and he had to step in, and he looked good for a while. But from there, what did he turn into? He turned back into the same Sam Darnold that we know for the last 3 games. What can Mike McDonald bring this team in year 2? I don't think they've really improved the roster all that much. I think the veterans they've brought in with Cooper Kupp and DeMarcus Lawrence help. I do. I'm not sure that they are better than 10 wins again. I think a lot of people are putting too much in the Darnold basket. So, we're looking at the NFC West. We're looking at 49ers and the Seahawks, probably the ones battling it out. You know what? I would say the 49ers and the Rams. Let's go. The 49ers and the Rams are probably the two that are fighting it out for the division win. I think the 49ers are back. I think they're going to be just as good as they were a few years ago. Maybe not Super Bowl runner-ups, but I think they're winning the division. I think the 49ers are there. I think the Rams are right after that. I think the Seahawks are after that, and I think the Cardinals are last. Cardinals haven't given me anything to really kind of show me that they're ready to take those steps. I don't think they're far off. I think there's a few moves they need to make. But as far as the start of this season right now, just before we kick off the season, that's where I think they are. I think the Seahawks and the Cardinals could potentially switch places. But I still think the Seahawks have better pieces in place than the Cardinals do. So, with all that, we'll do this on the next show when we record a longer show of who I think are going to be in the playoffs, what the final 4 teams will be, and who I think my eventual Super Bowl champion is. I've pretty much given it away throughout all these, but I'll be able to repeat that for the next show. We'll recap Thursday Night Football and Friday Night Football for those of you who don't know. It's also a Friday night game, which is pretty cool to start off the year. Tonight is the Eagles and the Cowboys, NFC East rivals. Then we have the Chiefs and the Chargers. So we get a Harbaugh on the first 2 games of the year. Patty Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Travis Swift, whatever you want to call him. Game 2, and then we'll take a look at the games on Sunday. This will be the show for Saturday. And then Loftside Bantr and Loftside Creative Media will be at Gillette Stadium to see the game on Sunday, Patriots and Raiders. So we'll be able to give you a from the stands point of view of what the Patriots look like, the Raiders look like, and everything else like that. But football season is back. And I'm excited. I'm very excited to have football back. I know I'm probably the only one in this household that's excited to have football back, but it goes all year long because you have the draft, you have free agency, you have all these different moves. You go through training camps, cut down days, everything else like that. The fact that the product has become what it has as a full year-long business that is profitable to have running on your networks and to talk about and everything else like that is pretty cool. It shows the growth. And, I've read a book about where the NFL started and where it kind of got to and the pioneers that kind of got it to where it is. And it's a pretty cool story. So, again, you can visit us at www.loftsidebanter.com. That's loftsideBantr.com. loftsidebanter@gmail.com. And we're looking forward to coming back with full episodes and sharing all the stories coming. Again, baseball, basketball's coming back, everything else like that. Hockey, obviously, with the Berard brothers. So, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you for week 1.